In our last video, we saw how desperation can lead us to make deals, to invite something in, thinking we know the cost. But what about the horrors you don't invite? The ones that are passed down to you, an inheritance you never wanted? Or the ones that find you not because you were desperate, but because you were loved? Tonight's stories aren't about what we ask for. They're about what is given to us, whether we want it or not, and the memories that are so powerful they refuse to stay buried. Story 3. The Inheritance. I was 11 when I learned my family's Christmas tradition wasn't just stockings and carols. It started a week before the 25th. I'd be in bed, and from the closet I'd hear a soft, scraping sound, like a nail being dragged down the wood. Then a woman's voice, thin and raspy, would whisper, "One less." The next night, the same sound. 2 less. It was a countdown, but a countdown to what? I was too scared to tell my parents. But on the third night, after the voice said 3 less, I finally broke and ran to their room. Instead of comforting me, my parents exchanged a grim, knowing look. My father sat me down and told me the truth. "It's your grandmother," he said, "or what's left of her." He explained that in our family, a dying matriarch could choose to defer death by making a bargain. She could linger as a spirit, growing stronger each year, waiting for a new host, a young, healthy body in her bloodline to inherit her consciousness. The countdown was her final ritual. On Christmas Eve, she would attempt to hollow me out and take my place. "But why?" I cried. My mother's face was a mask of pity and guilt. "Because she's selfish, and because we promised her you." They had promised their firstborn child in exchange for her wealth and business success. My life was a down payment on their comfortable life. The counting continued, a nightly death sentence. 4 less. 5 less. My parents did nothing. They just told me to be brave, that it was for the family. I was a prisoner in my own home. On Christmas Eve, the voice didn't come from the closet. It came from right beside my bed. 0, it hissed, crisp and clear. The air froze. A figure solidified from the shadows. A tall, gaunt woman with my eyes but a face twisted by decades of bitterness I'd never lived. She smiled and it didn't reach her hollow eyes. "The waiting is over," she said. "This body is mine." She lunged at me, her form turning into a cold smoke that forced its way into my nose and mouth. I felt a foreign presence clawing at my mind, trying to shove me into a dark corner. I fought back with every ounce of my will, thinking of my friends, my dreams, my life. There was a silent, internal war, and just as I felt myself fading, I heard a sound from the hallway, my parents crying. The distraction was enough. I felt the invading presence recoil, then retreat. The cold smoke poured out of me and dissipated into the air with a final, furious hiss. I was drenched in sweat, sobbing, but I was still me. The next morning, my parents rushed in, their faces pale with fear and shame. By my bed, on the shelf, was a single, small gift. It was from my grandmother's estate. There sat a beautiful, antique porcelain doll, and tucked into its tiny hand was a note in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. It read, "You are stronger than I thought. No matter. I can wait. The body of my firstborn grandchild will be mine." The doll sits on my shelf now, a daily reminder. My parents are getting older. They look at me with a new kind of fear, because they know the truth. She isn't gone. She's just waiting for me to let my guard down. or for them to become weak enough that she can try again. And one day, she will. Story 4. The Woman by the Window. There's a restaurant in the city that becomes something else on Christmas Eve. For 11 months, it's just a place for business lunches and quiet dinners. But on the night of the 24th, it transforms. The air hums with anticipation, with the clinking of glasses and the whispered promises of lovers. It was there, surrounded by all that forced cheer, that I learned a ghost doesn't need to be a thing of terror. Sometimes it's just a piece of love that got left behind. It was my third Christmas working the shift. We were slammed. A whirlwind of orders and champagne corks. And then, at the peak of the chaos, she walked in. The door didn't jingle. She just appeared in the doorway. A woman, elegant and poised, with long dark hair and a Prada bag held tight in her grip. But her beauty was secondary to her presence. Her skin was pale, not like porcelain, but like paper that had been left in the sun too long. A faint, translucent quality. And her eyes, they held a depth of stillness that silenced the noise around her. She ignored my greeting and moved directly to a specific table, the one in the corner by the large bay window overlooking the glittering city. It was the best seat in the house. She sat, placed her bag on the empty chair beside her, and simply waited. For hours. I brought her a menu. She didn't touch it. "I'm waiting for someone," she said, her voice soft, almost absorbed by the room's noise. I checked on her periodically, but her posture never changed. She didn't fidget, didn't check a phone. She was a statue of perfect patience. Her gaze fixed on the falling snow outside, her expression one of profound, unwavering expectation. As the night wore on and couples began to leave, hand in hand, her solitude became a dark spot in the room's happiness. The other staff noticed. We'd glance at her, then at the clock. 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Who was she waiting for that was this late on Christmas Eve? Just before midnight, I was taking an order at a nearby table. When I glanced back, the window seat was empty. The woman was gone. Not just from the table, but from the restaurant entirely. I hadn't seen her walk to the restroom, hadn't seen her pass the host stand. It was as if she had been a projection that someone simply turned off. The only evidence she'd been there was the lingering scent of her perfume, jasmine and cold night air, and the profound sense of absence she left behind. We were all unsettled, trying to rationalize it, when the door opened again. A man stumbled in, looking like his world had ended. His coat was dusted with snow, his eyes red and raw. He scanned the room, his gaze desperate, and then it landed on the empty window seat. He moved toward it as if pulled by a magnet. I approached him. "Sir, would you like a menu?" He didn't look at me. "A Moscow mule," he whispered. "And a 4 roses. Neat. A strange combination." I brought the drinks. He took the Moscow mule, the vibrant, coppery mug, and gently, reverently, pushed it across the table to the empty chair. Then he lifted his own glass of amber whiskey, his hand trembling so badly the liquid nearly sloshed over the rim. I couldn't hold it in. "Sir, forgive me, but a woman was sitting there. All night. She only left a few minutes ago." He finally looked at me, and the pain in his eyes was a physical force. A single tear traced a path through his stubble. "That was Alice," he said, his voice cracking. "My wife. This was our table. Our first date was here, 10 years ago tonight. We made a promise. Every Christmas Eve, no matter what, we would come back to this exact spot." He took a shaky sip of his drink. She was diagnosed with leukemia in the spring. She fought so hard, In the hospital just last month, she made me swear. She made me promise we would keep our tradition. She said she'd find a way to be here. My blood ran cold. He thought he was keeping a lonely, heartbreaking vow, but he wasn't alone. She was there. Her love for him, her devotion to the ritual, was so immense, so powerful, that it momentarily burned a hole straight through the veil between our world and the next. Her promise was so strong, we all saw her keeping it. He left shortly after, a broken man clinging to a ghost. I went to clear the table. His glass was empty, but the Moscow mule he had placed for Alice. The glass was still full, beaded with condensation. The ginger beer still bubbled faintly. The ice cubes were perfectly solid, untouched by the warmth of the room. It was impossible, but there it was. Christmas acts as a lens. It focuses the strongest emotions in our lives until they become so potent they can no longer be contained. A grandmother's greed becomes a possessive spirit. A friend's desperation becomes a demonic contract. And a wife's love becomes a final, tangible gift. It proves that the spirits walking among us aren't always monsters. Some are just echoes of a promise, refusing to fade. So tonight, when you raise a glass, listen closely. You might just hear the faintest clink of another from a glass that never empties, answered from the other side. The story continues. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.